Hello, world. Welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. Hello, world, and welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. We're broadcasting live from the Joy Virtual Studio right here in the beautiful Finger Lakes region of New York State. It is so great to be with all of you today. It is Thursday, November 20th, almost the end of a very busy broadcast week, almost Friday. Thank you, Jesus. And I am so thankful for all of you on the live chat. Of course, we're live on Rumble, live on Twitter, Spreely TV, Roku TV, and Apple TV, every podcast platform you can ever imagine. And we have an amazing guest lined up for all of you today. The Tiffany Cianci will join us in just about 10, 15 minutes right here on the Shannon Joy Show. She is gaining a huge following on X and also TikTok. She is one of the foremost experts on vulture socialism, venture capitalism, and private equity. And wow, you guys are going to love this guest. She has an amazing story. There's a lot to talk about. They are ripping the American dream away from every American, whether it's by, increasing housing costs and rents for average Americans, to infiltrating small businesses and the free market through, private equity and venture socialism. They are manipulating and rigging our markets, making it very, very difficult to compete. And she has all the receipts. Her story is extraordinary. We're going to bring her in just a moment. But you can see the headlines of today. Trump says he'll import foreign workers to make chips in yet another rug pull for the MAGA base. Donald Trump says the U.S. will not be successful if we do not let people who invest billions bring in millions of immigrants, announcing a major effort to import foreign labor to teach Americans how to make computer chips. We're going to look at that video in this first section of the Shannon Joy Show, and also look at a piece that I promoted yesterday that is very important. It's the good news about what's happening in the U.S. There is a lot of bad, but we are looking at pockets of resistance across the country, bipartisan, Democrat and Republican, from the bottom up, resisting one of the biggest threats that we are facing in the year 2026 and beyond. And that is the threat from techno-fascists. The digital ID, the digital scoring system, digital currency, and the massive grid that they are building and erecting in our country, using massive Manhattan-sized data centers to collect and process all of our private data and use it against us on a regular basis, to control us and to essentially take ownership over everything, including our human bodies. That's the big plan. It is dystopian. It is wicked. And the tech bros are firmly ensconced in Washington, D.C. Well, there is a lot of resistance. And I love this piece by Wired entitled "The Data Center Resistance Has Arrived." We're going to be looking at that in a moment, before we bring Tiffany Cianci in to talk about the financial fraud, the criminal cartels, the collusion between the banksters and the tech bros and the private equity firms and the federal government and the regulatory institutions like the FCC, and also both political parties, Republicans and Democrats alike. This is a system that has been built, a trap that has been set and has been expanded over the past 4 presidential administrations: Obama, Trump, Biden, and now Trump again. And they are getting ready to close that trap on us. 2008, exponentially, only they're going after your pensions. So we're going to be getting into that with Tiffany in just a moment, but I do want to say hello to everyone. That's the bad news, but the good news is that we can fight back. The culture and the market can fight back. And that's why I love this Wired piece. So let's say hello to our friend Scott Gordon, the very first live chatter. Great to see you, Scott. Hello, everyone from Argentina. I love that. We have gone international. Great to see you, Scott Gordon. I had no idea you were from Argentina. That's pretty cool. CM1968 is with us. Hey, Brandon_Bennett. So good to see you. Glad that you are here today. We have Possum King joining us on the SJ Show live chat. Hey, Teletoast. Love to see you. Lots of new names. Zoe Joey 123 becoming a regular on the live chat. Love to see you as well, Zoe Joey. We have Futurez joining us and Strident Conservative. David Leach, love seeing you on the live chat. Everyone needs to go to stridentconservative.com right now. TheStridentConservative.com right now. He is one of the best independent analysts out there, and he provides amazing, relevant commentary from an independent, constitutionally conservative perspective. We love your work, David Leach, and we love you. Great to see you on the live chat. Rothan Walker is with us, already mad at me about the live chat. We're going to be welcoming Rothan Walker into the Joy Virtual Studio. He has all kinds of beefs with me about the show, and I want to hear from you. So we're going to have him in for 20 minutes, not next week because it's a short week for Thanksgiving, but the week after. Doesn't like my headline. It's misleading and fake. Shame on you, Shannon. This is just about Mexicans coming in so that we all have the most delicious tortilla chips. You got me, Rothan Walker. I thought you were really mad at me. You got me. Oh my gosh. Satire, so difficult, right? Satire, so difficult to pick up on a live chat when it is text and not actual commentary. You're hilarious, Rothan Walker. I love it. Tortilla chips, not real chips. No, it's about the real chips. And we have the clip for you. Hey, TJ, if you want to get that clip ready, Donald Trump betraying once again his MAGA base, pulling the rug out right from underneath them, which he does, I don't know, a couple times a day, every day for the past months. This is just the latest. Anyone who thought we were going to have America First policies, that we were going to look out for the little guy, we were going to protect the American worker. Remember, they sold us that bill of goods to justify the tariff taxes. Those are the taxes that they have dumped on the backs of the American consumer and small businesses after they've crushed us with the inflation taxes. And the inflation taxes came after they crushed us with the lockdowns of 2020 when they decided who was necessary, right? Necessary business and unnecessary businesses. So when they shut down thousands upon thousands of mom and pops in the lockdowns of 2020, they created hundreds of new billionaires on our backs. And this is not capitalism. This is not free market. But now Donald Trump, of course, is rewarding his tech bro crony. They just his campaign, they're his bosses. And now he has to reward them with cheap labor imported into the US to make the chips in the factories, in the databases that will be used to enslave the American citizens in the new techno-fascist utopia that vision. Isn't it just great? Isn't it great? Here's Donald Trump with the latest in the rug pulls. Go ahead and let's run that video.
To bring people to get those plants opened. We want you to do that, and we want those people to teach our people how to make computer chips and how to make other things. You can't come in, and I'm explaining, you can't come in, open up a massive computer chip factory for billions and billions of dollars like is being done in Arizona and think you're going to hire people off an unemployment line to run it. They're going to have to bring thousands of people with them, and I'm going to welcome those people. I love my conservative friends. I love MAGA, but this is MAGA. And those people are going to teach our people how to make computer chips, and in a short period of time, our people are going to be doing great, and those people can go home where they probably always want to be. You know, when people are born someplace, they tend to want to go, and we have the greatest country in the world, but they want to go.
Okay. Yeah, that's ridiculous. It's ludicrous. He's mocking you. He's mocking his base. He's completely betraying you. He lied to you. He's a snake. He told you he's a snake, but alas, people again just can't seem to figure this out about Donald Trump. Sorry, MAGA. I love you. No, he doesn't. I guarantee you that he doesn't think about you. He doesn't care about you. He certainly doesn't love you, and he is going to sell this country to the lowest bidder. But there is resistance, and I don't know how many times his base needs needs to be betrayed and abused by this president before they'll figure it out. I'm just here sitting here waiting for people to wake up, grow a spine, have some pride, and demand that he does what he says he's going to do, even though he never will. So we have to kick him to the curb or revolt from the bottom up, which I'm so glad is happening. And what I love about it is that it's bipartisan. I told you guys we're bringing Tiffany Cianci in just a moment. We're getting her ready, set up in the Joy Virtual Studio. She paints a bleak picture about the criminality, the corruption, and the corrosion of our free market system, coming from Washington, D.C., as they partner with private equity, vulture socialism, and the tech bros to utterly crush our free market system and the American dream. Your dream of owning a home, running a business, being an entrepreneur, all of those things, get over it. You're not going to get it because they are envisioning a very, very different future for the American people. And they're doing it on purpose. So we are going to have to be prepared to fight back from the bottom up. And this is what I love about this piece from Wired magazine, which we began to look at. This is good news. Okay. The good news here is that we are looking at very impactful, very effective, bottom-up, bipartisan resistance to these data centers. And the data centers are going to be the place where I believe we can really wage an impactful war against these criminals in Washington, D.C., and the tech fascists. And this goes into, he's talking about the plants, the data centers, where they're going to make the chips, right? They want to plop that in your backyard, suck up all your energy, all your water, blow out your electricity bills, ruin communities. It's horrifying. Okay. So this is the piece from Wired. Peter Hubbard, a new report, many reports actually are finding that local opposition to data centers skyrocketed in the second quarter of this year. Peter Hubbard was one of two Democratic candidates who took a decisive and surprising victory in the state of Georgia. And he said, and this is in a local election, he said the number one issue was affordability, but a very close second was, and that's the economy, a very close second was the data centers and the concern around them just sucking up water, sucking up the electricity, sucking up the land. And no one was really paying any attention to it. And they're not paying any taxes. So these data centers are getting sweetheart deals, tax abatements, subsidies, and they're going to crush communities, absolutely crush communities. Kelly McCarty has a comment on the live chat. Hey, Kelly, great to see you. I can't shake the feeling that these deals Trump has made with these companies building factories, data centers here come with an unspoken promise of foreign cheap labor, among a lot of really other awful things. Georgia, according to this piece, has become a hotspot for data center development over the past few years. Some research, and this is a trend mostly in red states, interestingly enough, some research indicates it's one of the fastest growing markets for data center development in the country, thanks in part to some very, very generous tax breaks. It's now a nexus for organizing against these same data centers, right? So community opposition, we're seeing growing in all of these hotspot areas. We're seeing it in Texas. We're seeing it in Washington. We saw it in Indianapolis, Indiana. We're seeing it in Georgia, and it's only increasing, and it's bipartisan, Democrats and Republicans, right? Community opposition to data centers, a new report finds, is on the rise across the country. And in red states, including Georgia, and Indiana are leading the way of bipartisan opposition. A new report released by Data Center Watch. Now, this is run by AI security companies, and it's called 10A Labs, and they're tracking community opposition, right? Because they're concerned about this to data centers across the world. And they've been keeping an eye on this topic since 2023. This week's report finds that the tide has turned sharply in the months since the group's first public output, the second quarter of this year. And the new report finds that it represented what they said, quote, sharp escalation in data center opposition across the country. This is amazing. This is happening across the country. Josh Thomas from Virginia, he's a Virginia state delegate in Prince William County, is also saying led the local against the proposed Prince William Digital Gateway, which would have put more than 30 data centers on the edge of a national reserve located in the north of the state. And a group of homeowners challenged the project in court, and a judge voided zoning in August, which temporarily halted construction. He said the little guy finally won, which rarely happens in any industry, let alone where the Magnificent 10 play. Those are the tech companies. And so both Thomas and Hubbard, the opposition to data centers, the Data Center Watch report stresses, has been thoroughly bipartisan. And some national politicians, including Senator Josh Hawley, Representative Tom Massey, and Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, have begun to speak out against them. So this is absolutely bipartisan, and this is growing. People are figuring out what these big tech companies are up to, and it is imperative that all of us understand the solutions are not going to come from Washington, D.C., that we are going to have to fight them in every corner of this country, at the zoning board level, the town board level, with local legislation, state legislation, in blue states, in red states. We need to continue to grow this effort, because they're going to be hitting us from every single angle, not just from the tech bros, but from a whole other, many other sources. So I love this piece. I want to give you guys a little bit of hope before we bring in our guest, Tiffany Cianci. Because when we take a look at what is going on with private equity and how they are gobbling up the free market in the United States of America, destroying our communities, raising housing prices and also rents, and absolutely crushing small businesses and franchises through a variety of tactics, including predatory lending, fraud, collusion, price fixing, bribery, harassment, libel, slander. Tiffany Cianci has experienced all of this. When she went up against private equity, her small business was almost crushed in the lockdowns of 2020. She was one of those businesses that was not deemed to be necessary, right? Remember, we had those companies that were necessary and those who were unnecessary. She ended up going up against some of these private equity companies when her business became vulnerable. Her story is also extraordinary, and she's also an amazing explainer of how these corporations are cheating in so many ways and crushing the American dream. So we're going to get to Tiffany in just a moment. I want to take a quick break before we bring her in to thank some of our sponsors. But this is going to be a big show. We have lots of areas to cover. I want to start with her story so that she can explain exactly how this works. But every single one of you needs to understand how they are doing this, how they are collapsing small businesses, and also destroying the American dream, and building an infrastructure that is entirely controlled and beneficial to only the elite billionaire class. It's truly horrifying. We're going to bring Tiffany in just a moment. Keep it tuned right here on the Shannon Joy Show. rocketdollar.com/Shannon Joy. That is rocketdollar.com/Shannon Joy. Amazing sponsors of the Shannon Joy Show. And with Rocket Dollar, you can move a portion of your retirement out of the government to Wall Street controlled stock market and into private investments, physical gold and silver, and or real estate, which is what I love about Rocket Dollar. I just did an interview last week with Henry Yoshida. You just saw on that commercial that we ran, but this is from Technocracy. Patrick Wood wrote this. Even the tech billionaires at this point know that the AI bubble is about to burst. And he says that AI is the mother of all the bubbles. And when it pops, the explosion will take out most of the AI companies, all of their suppliers, writes Patrick Wood. Work will stop on half-finished AI data centers. Others will be shuttered because there will be no money to maintain them. When corporations realize that the ROI on billions of dollars invested never materialize, many will collapse under their own weight. And when that happens, as you all know, 30 to 40% of the entire value of the stock market is in the Magnificent Seven, those 7 tech companies. If you are not diversified out of the traditional retirement funds that are featured in the 401ks and IRAs, you are at risk. It's not just gold and silver, physical gold and silver, but they also have real estate, private equity, private corporations, even crypto, if you're interested in crypto, which I am not, but they give you that option as well. So go to rocketdollar.com/joy. That is rocketdollar.com/Shannon Joy.
This is Jennifer with darkbags.com. I wanted to show you one of our newest products from Escape Zone. This is our satellite Faraday sleeve. So it actually will fit your satellite phone, which we've noticed that there wasn't any product on the market that perfectly fit them, so we decided to make them ourselves. And it has this Velcro closure right here to close it up, and that makes this dust and water resistant. So what's nice about this Faraday pouch is that it'll protect against any EMPs. So your device is, your emergency device actually will always be protected in here as long as it stays in here. You can take it out for everyday use, but if you're not using it, we recommend that you store it in here. Again, this is available on darkbags.com.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Shannon Joy Show. Today, we are going to welcome in just a moment into the Joy Virtual Studio a new guest. I hope she becomes a regular guest because Tiffany Cianci has an extraordinary gift of explaining very complicated issues, very complicated topics like private equity in a way that makes sense to regular people. She crosses over into many different areas. She understands the lockdowns of 2020. She understands private equity. She understands, what happened politically with the creation of the medical freedom movement, which became MAGA. She's independent. She is willing to critique both the left and the right. She doesn't idolize or worship politicians, which is a critical component of good content in the United States of America today. And I hope to really learn from her on a variety of topics. She is a social media influencer. She's a small business advocate, also a freelance journalist. She's gained prominence over the past few years for her vocal criticism of private equity firms and her support for Bobby Kennedy Jr. in the 2024 election when he joined that Trump campaign. She's also had ongoing legal battles with corporate entities in the franchising industry, and she has found a way to platform everything that she is doing and her battle as the host of TikTok Town Hall. It's a live political interview series on TikTok. She's amassed an enormous online following with over 60 million monthly live viewers, and average audiences exceeding 90,000 per broadcast. She is an amazing researcher, also a mother, also a survivor. In terms, she had a really tough upbringing, and I'm just such a huge fan of this next guest. Tiffany Cianci, welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. I just love your work. I love everything you do. And I hope that we can learn from you and continue to learn from you over the next 18 to 24 months, because I think things are going to get incredibly bumpy, despite our hope that the election of Donald Trump and Bobby Kennedy Jr. would kind of set things straight here in the US. A lot of people realizing that there isn't a lot of change so far in the administration. You're one of the people standing up, speaking out, calling that out. Let's start there. Let's just keep it broad. What do you make of the situation for the average American today in the United States of America, regular family, young kid who wants to pursue the American dream, maybe open up a business or start a family, become an entrepreneur? What are our prospects today from your perspective? Let's start there.
From my perspective right now, the prospects of a young person that is aspiring to have a family or the American dream as it was laid out for all of us when we were younger are grim. I don't like to say that they're grim. I want to give people lots of hope, but right now, those prospects are grim. They have literally no hope of acquiring a home ever. And so naturally, we put out 50-year mortgages because that's easier than addressing the root cause of the problem. Right. We are suffering under immense greedflation. They can call it inflation all they want, but when you look at, like, let's just use Walmart as an example. Walmart in 2024, their total profits were $15.4 billion. This year, they're $19.5 billion. They went up 35% in 1 year while they were, cutting corners for all of us? They were just like artificially hiking prices. It wasn't tariffs. You don't go up 35% in record. They had record profits in 2024, and they've gone up 35% this year. So we have corporations that are squeezing every dollar because they know a crash is coming. Like every corporation can see that the stock market has been artificially propped up for at least a few years, right? You can't have record profits over and over and over again coming out of COVID and think that that is going to go on forever, right? You have artificial shorts and artificial derivatives in the market that are unsustainable. You have housing that is out of control, which has always been a benchmark of economic success in the United States. Right. And we have no possibilities. And for the first time ever, investors are outpacing first-time and second-time home buyers in the marketplace. That has never happened in American history, ever. Which means that for every one house that a first-time home buyer is buying, 1.4 houses are getting bought by investors.
It's wild. We're going to get into that. I mean, we're going to get in because, two of the most viral videos that you did, one recently explains why your house that you bought for $189,000 that hovered around $250,000 all of a sudden in the past 2, 3, 4 years has doubled, tripled, quadrupled in price. Absurd, obscene prices, $750,000, $850,000 for the exact same house, driving up property taxes and driving people out of their homes, and also raising the comps in that community, boxing out every human, individual potential home buyer and creating a feeding frenzy for venture capitalists or private equity, which we're going to get to in a moment because we're going to explain that. But I want to slow down for a minute with you, Tiffany, so that this audience can get to know you and understand where you come from and your story. You experienced the essential versus the non-essential designation in 2020. You are a small business owner, a mom, you owned a daycare center, loved your job, and you were crushed by the lockdowns of 2020, 18 months that you were shut down and not allowed to operate while the big boxes and the pot shops and the liquor stores were allowed to operate. It was disgusting. But you fought your way to that position to begin with. Very tough upbringing and a tough life. You're a fighter in every way. If you wouldn't mind, let's take some time. And I just love to hear your story, like how you came to be that small business owner and how you found the will to fight. You were up against everyone in 2020. We need to hear that story first before we get into all the bad stuff, because people need hope. And I see so much hope in you. And I know you're hopeful too, which is another thing that I love about you. Right? So let's start there and let's just get to know you. Tell us that extraordinary story.
If you want me to start with 2020, I'd had a really good career for my whole adult life, and I had worked really hard to put my husband through law school, and he had finally gotten a really good job, and he said, you don't have to travel anymore for work. Find something local, do something local. I had a very professional career that had me traveling all over the world, and I stopped. And I bought a franchise called the Little Gym that was for sale in our community. And the Little Gym, like I had been a dance major in school, and I was like, dance and gym, they're like baby gym, that's not too far apart. And I had a degree in music, and I was like, I can do this. This will be great. I can be with my kids. I don't have to miss things anymore. And I opened a Little Gym franchise, and I was really happy. Like, it was hard. It was hard work. I worked long hours, but I brought my kids to work with me, which is what I wanted to do. And I worked hard, and we were really careful. We didn't take on any debt. I paid everything with cash. I made sure that we were fiscally responsible. And then right as I got my phone call that we were like in the black, that we had achieved our first profitable year, that was on March 5th, 2020. And on March 13th, we were locked down. And my community, when I said we were fiscally responsible, I had saved almost $75,000 as a business. That's really hard to do in a kid's space, because the summers were always a little bit harder because people leave for the beach, they go places, they unenroll. Right. So I'd saved all this money to get us through summer, which saved our business. Really, long term, it saved our business because we could keep paying our employees. But that only lasted so long. We were shut down, and we were kept there for the second longest lockdown in the U.S. So Frederick County, Maryland was locked down through July of 2021. And then we had to retrain people. We had to rehire people. We had to come in with all of these PPE requirements. So it took months more for us to reopen after we got the go ahead. And during that entire time, you know, we had landlords, we had bills, we had staff. Right. And the problem was, it wasn't just my location. It was 286 locations that were shut down. And so our company suffered terribly. The founders had been really generous, and they had told us not to pay royalties while we were closed. And so the company suffered. And one of the investors, the Patel family out of Illinois, they own a bunch of grocery stores there. Everyone knows them in that part of the country. They were one of our investors that was a silent investor. And they secretly sold all of their stakes to a really horrible, evil private equity company called Unleash Brands. And in the matter of literally July 21st, I think, was when we were told that we'd been acquired. And it was 2 weeks after I got the go ahead to start reopening.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
It was just horrible. But we weren't the only ones. This company had gone on a buying spree of buying up every company that had been hurt during COVID that served children. They bought Snapology, they had Urban Air trampoline parks, they had XP League, they had Class 101 College Preparatory Academy. Now they have Water Wing Swim School and Sylvan Learning Centers. Everywhere that served children, they would and squeeze those parents. And
that's interesting because, and you know, it's very frustrating because what happened was that our government, state governments, the federal government, the apparatus that forced the lockdowns and the shutdowns artificially put thousands of businesses that would be healthy and thriving and doing well and serving their communities into a horrible situation, making them vulnerable artificially. Not because you did anything wrong and didn't balance your books and weren't providing a service and weren't serving your community, but because you're artificially suppressed and smothered by the entities that shut us down. And that made you sitting ducks. All of these little franchises for these very evil companies. And you said Unleashed Brands is the company, and they're still operating. Are they still in business?
Well, they're still operating, but they're not operating like they thought they would be operating.
Okay. Well, I like
They've
that.
lost a lot of money because of me. They've lost a lot of money
Good.
because of me.
Good. Good. Keep going.
They
I
lost
cut you off.
probably hundreds of millions of dollars because of me.
Yes. This is why I like this girl. I told you guys we're going to love her. Okay. So I'm sorry to interrupt you. Please continue.
Well, they came in and they immediately started making cuts. They were very aggressive. They started terrorizing franchisees. They wanted to break up the union. And I had the honor and responsibility of having recently been elected the president of our union.
Okay.
And with each brand that they had acquired before us, when they wanted to break up the union, they immediately basically started creating a circumstance to sue the union board members. And it was very effective. They told us that we had to sign new contracts. And our contracts were good for a decade. We weren't signing new contracts. They came in and they told us that we were going to be required to sign new contracts. They sent us sneaky contracts that were hidden inside of plain language documents. Like, this is a new ACH agreement to pay your royalties. Just sign it. And it had like 25 new terms buried in one paragraph that overrid our franchise agreements we'd signed a decade ago.
Oh,
and I happened to be married to a federal attorney. And I told everybody not to sign those documents. I was like, don't sign this.
Yeah.
And some people did because they were scared, and some people didn't. But then it got worse. They brought in new documents that they told us we had to sign or we were going to be penalized that would increase the royalties we paid, for instance, on a birthday party, and would increase our fees by 75 to 90% over what we were paying. We were just coming out of lockdown. We'd lost everything. And then we took out loans for debt-free gyms like me, which was horrifying. We took out loans to pay the corporate office because when our former founders told us not to pay royalties, these guys came in and said, you're going to pay them now or we're going to shut you down. So we all took out loans.
Oh, my word.
And so then they came in and said, and now you're going to pay more money you can't afford. They canceled our insurance company and made us go to a company that they had control over, that their chief legal officer was the guarantor of. There were all of these like shady, like just deals on deals on deals, kickbacks on kickbacks of all the things they were going to make us do. And so we got together, our union, and we hired what they called like the nuclear option of franchise attorneys to represent us. And we sent them a letter and said, we are not going to sign these documents. None of us, not a single one of us, 96% of us. And we started what was called like a communication blockade. They would have a system-wide call. None of us would show up. Not one, not one gym owner. Right. And we did everything we were supposed to do. They got a forceful letter from our lawyer, and the following day they terminated my contract and told everybody they no longer had a union president, and they were on their own. And so we tried to fight that, and they sent us to a secret court system called an arbitration system, where judges are paid for by corporations and they don't have to follow the rules and they don't have to follow the laws. None of the legal things that you think you have a right to in a regular courtroom exist there. And no matter what happened in your case, you have a 97% chance of losing.
Unbelievable. And I've heard you talk about these arbitration courts, these secret courts that many Americans unwittingly, approve when you go and you sign documents to, get an Uber cab or a Lyft or any of those long service agreements, guys, that you're scrolling down and you're hitting agree. Unfortunately, those agreements are locking you in. They're locking you into an arbitration system that is rigged in case you ever have a claim against any of the companies or the businesses that you're engaging with on a regular basis. So everything from a movie subscription to an Uber driver, you name it. If you have a legal claim and you click that box, you waive all of your rights to go in front of a real judge or maybe a jury, and you have to go to arbitration. And in arbitration, it's rigged. The judges are on the payroll of the corporations, and the corporations never lose. And people don't realize this. I mean, can't tell you how many. I'm embarrassed to admit how many of those agreements I just hit every time. And so they forced you guys into that situation.
They happen in ways that people don't understand. The average 4-person family, 2 adults, 2 kids, is beholden to anywhere from 150 to 1,200 of them, depending on how much technology they have in their home. And none of them know it. You take your kid to Urban Air Trampoline Park, which I talk about an awful lot because it's owned by the private equity firm that I am fighting. You sign your kid in for a birthday party at the front, and they accidentally forget to snap your kid into a harness, and they fall 40 feet to a concrete floor and break every bone in their body. Arbitration. You're not going to court for your child, and you're not going to win, right? And your child, and this is happening. Like, one of the reasons the company keeps fighting me is because I have documents and I'm testifying for a bunch of children that fell in their trampoline parks. And all of those children, with the exception of 2, have been forced into arbitration. The 2 that weren't were not forced into arbitration because they went with a friend, and there wasn't a parent there to sign the arbitration agreement. They just happened to get lucky the day they almost died, the day they broke every bone in their body, that they weren't with their mom, right? So you go to a theme park. Disney very recently just killed a man's wife, and they tried to force him into arbitration because he had signed up for Disney Plus for a trial 2 years prior on his television. And they said that arbitration agreement should be enforced against him in a theme park. Now, there was mass public backlash, so they withdrew that and settled the case. But then Uber Eats did the exact same thing. An Uber driver caused a horrifying accident because they hadn't been properly vetted by Uber. And the woman and her husband sued. And they said because her 12-year-old daughter had ordered a pizza on Uber Eats 2 years prior, that they should be held to an Uber Eats arbitration agreement that wasn't even with the same company. And that was upheld, and they were forced into arbitration. And so a lot of people don't realize these secret courts exist. They don't realize that 1.4 million court cases each year are litigated in them, and that the person always loses 97% of the time, with more than 90% of these cases all being litigated by one monopoly that is entirely controlled by corporations and really underhanded legal systems.
Horrifying. Horrifying. Yeah. So you were forced into they terminated your franchise, and they were forced into this arbitration. Then it got vicious, though. It got really vicious. You continued to fight back, and this private equity company, Unleashed Brands, unleashed absolute hell on you personally and your family, trying to destroy you, utterly destroy you. Can you just speak to that a little bit so the audience understands what you went through with that?
Yeah, they wanted me to settle, to stop, and I didn't give up. I went forward, and they wanted to use me as an example so that the rest of the union would stop fighting. Our union was our what's called a franchisee association. They wanted them to stop fighting, so they tried to make examples out of me. And the examples they tried to make were terrifying. They hired private investigators to stalk me and my employees. They hired a felon with 88 felony convictions for counterfeiting, forgery, assault with a deadly weapon, escaping police custody, animal cruelty, to forge documents in my case. And they submitted them in a court of law, and almost got away with it, and my house in the process. They filed a fraudulent judgment to seize my bank accounts. And in what many people would say is the most horrifying instance, just to make an example out of me, I was going through a difficult pregnancy, and they wanted me produced faster for a deposition. So they filed documents in the arbitration to force me to have an abortion I did not want, against my will.
What? For what? What purpose would they? That's insane.
It was shortly after a company called Seidler Private Equity acquired them. And I was featured on the cover of the New York Times, and they were very angry. And 6 days after the New York Times article, they filed a motion saying that my bed rest was inadequate to delay a deposition of me. And so they filed a motion to ask the judge to compel me to schedule the fastest abortion possible, because according to them, hey, I was going to lose the baby anyway, right? I was on bed rest, and I was going through a very stressful pregnancy because of them. And I'm a Catholic. And so that's what they demanded, and that's what they filed for. And
unbelievable. But you continued to fight, and you continued to fight back. Yeah. Keep going.
With the arbitration, we ended up both being prevailing parties. He gave them pretty much everything they wanted except money. He didn't give them any money from me. I won a defamation case because they had lied to everyone about me. They had written emails to every union member saying I was like stealing from the union, that I was abusing my customers and my staff. They doctored photographs and submitted them in court saying I was calling people horrifying things, words I'd never used in my life. And so even in this very corrupt system, it was so clear that I was defamed, that I won that part of the case. But they lied about it. They immediately published and said that I didn't win anything. They immediately hired somebody to alter my Wikipedia page to say they beat me in court. They did not. There were, I think, 13 total counts. I think they won 2 and I won 1. Well, every one they didn't win, I won. So I guess I won 11. But I won like an actual claim on them. And then they started suing me in other courts. They started suing me from state to state. They just filed against me recently. They tried to have me put in prison for 2 years at one point. They said I wouldn't stop volunteering to teach special needs children, and they considered that a violation of their non-compete. And so I should be put in prison until my non-compete was up.
Unbelievable.
I was volunteering with special needs kids. And they just filed that claim again in Maryland because I had sold my business to keep it safe from them. I gave it away for $1, and they were upset that it survived, and now they're trying to shut down the new owners. And so now they've filed again to try to send me back. I don't know if they're going to ask the judge to send me to prison this time or not, but we keep fighting.
Wow. Yeah. And you do keep fighting. Listen, I mean, this is extraordinary, but nothing gets you down. You keep smiling and you keep fighting and they keep throwing everything at you. Now, before we go to break, because we're going to launch into private equity and help this audience understand private equity and how it's a complicated topic, but it is going to impact every single one of you in every way that you can imagine in the next couple years, especially as they move to attempt to collapse our economy. And they're coming after your pensions, and they're coming after your homes, and they're coming after your businesses. And even if you're responsible, even if you've saved $75,000, even if you've done the right things and you haven't signed contracts, you could unwittingly be in their crosshairs and tangled up in that web that they have purposefully created. They've rigged in Washington, D.C. with federal regulators, with both political parties, with multiple multinational organizations. They've bribed the courts. They're using, as Tiffany explained in her story, and this is why her story is very important to understand, the techniques that they're using: predatory lending, fraud, collusion, price fixing, bribery, harassment, which they have deployed against you, lawfare, libel, slander, defamation, all of these things that have been, waged against Tiffany could be waged against us if we don't wake up very fast. And this is why this is such an important topic to understand. But before we get to that, we're going to go to a break. I do want to ask you, why do you think, right? You're just a girl. You're just a mom, wants to open and take care, a dance center, a little gym for kids. And, you don't have big corporate backers. You're not anything. I mean, you're very special, but it's not anything extraordinary, but they are throwing everything but the kitchen sink at you. What do you think it is that you are doing so successfully that scares them so badly and requires them to go after you in this way?
A very large billionaire-backed PAC called the International Franchise Association governs all franchising. And it has very successfully stopped every single major scandal within franchising from coming out over the last 15 years. Every time CBS got close on one of these scandals, when private equity got involved, they were able to suppress those investigations. They didn't think I would be able to do that. And I ended up on the cover of the New York Times and the New York Post. And I ended up on 4 episodes of Candace Owens. And I ended up on all of these news broadcasts. And all over the United States, people have had me on to talk about this. And I've spoken before Congress, and I've modified 2 rules at the FTC. They didn't know what my background was. They thought I was a gym mom. They didn't know I was a public relations director for senators. And if they had, they probably would have chosen someone else. But now they have to stop me, because if I can do it, someone else can do it. That's all there is to it.
And you have a massive following now, and your following only grows. Again, I mentioned in the introduction your TikTok town hall. You still do that? I'm not on TikTok. I'm not a TikTok. You need to teach me about TikTok. I want to do some TikTok, but I don't know how to do it. It's intimidating.
Well, you're live on TikTok right now. You're live on TikTok right now.
Come on, let's go. All these young people. You're awesome. You're awesome. 60 million monthly live viewers. Average audiences exceeding 90,000 per broadcast. Good for you. I'm so glad to meet women like you, and men too, if there are guys out there, but meet women like you just don't give up. And I want to thank you for that. We're going to take a quick break, very quick commercial break. We're going to come back in and get right back to Tiffany, using her story in context. If you think that this is unique to her franchise or to her operation, think again. If you're wondering why Joann Fabrics is out of business, if you're wondering why Tuesday Morning went out of business and Big Lots, if you're wondering what's going on with HVAC companies and veterinaries and retirement homes, all of these areas, so many businesses that you think are mom and pops, you think that they're local, they're being gobbled up by private equity. They're being lied to. They're being used. And this is creating a massive, massive monopoly. It is a monopoly of monopolies. And there are only a few people at the very top who are being protected by the federal government right now that are going to come out on the winning end of this. And they are going after your pensions. That's the next step. We can't let them do that. When we come back, we're going to learn from Tiffany, to understand how they're doing this. And then we're going to talk about how we can be like Tiffany and fight back and stand up and make sure that we have a future for our kids. Tiffany, I have 3 kids. I have a 19-year-old son, a 17-year-old daughter, and a 14-year-old son as well. And they need the American dream. This is why I do this every day. I know it's why you do it as well. And at this point, that's what we're fighting for the kids. I'm fighting for the kids with you. And
exactly.
Can't wait to learn from you. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in a moment right here on the Shannon Joy Show.
Hey guys, Justin here with the Satellite Phone Store. And with things like Starlink, satellite messengers and all that, are satellite phones still really something useful in 2025? Well, that depends. If you're deep in the backcountry, out at sea, or working in remote areas and need reliable voice communication, a satellite phone is still unmatched. Unlike messengers that only send a text message, or Starlink, which requires a battery and a big bulky antenna, a satellite phone doesn't require any setup, it doesn't require Wi-Fi, it's a grab-and-go solution that works anywhere in the world. Whether your livelihood depends on it or you're on some crazy expedition somewhere, having a satellite phone with you is the best way to communicate. If you're in an emergency situation, sending a text message may not actually be enough. So being able to hop on the phone with a medical professional or search and rescue and be able to describe exactly where you are may be the way that saves your life. So having a satellite phone, especially in 2025, is still a very useful tool.
Big thank you to our sponsors over at Purge. Right now, this is the product that I've been using. I'm on day 7 of my 15-day intestinal purge. So this is an advanced cleanse for digestive health. And, growing up, speaking of our healthcare system, every time you get sick, whether you have the sniffles, a sore throat, inflammation, you go to the doctor and it's always either a virus or a bacteria, So you get an antiviral or an antibacteria. Well, when was the last time you went to your medical doctor when you were dealing with some sort of malady and they said to you, hey, you know what? Maybe it's a parasite. maybe it's not viral or bacterial, but maybe it's parasitic. This idea that humans can't have parasites or don't have parasites is one of the most interesting suppression suppressed pieces of information that I have seen. And I just thought of, when I first started thinking about parasites, I'm like, wow, like no one ever talks about them. But it is very true that humans can have parasites, and those parasites can impact your health in many, many negative ways. Right now, Purge is giving you guys 15% off of your order if you go to www.purgestore.com/joy. That is purgestore.com/joy. Use the promo code JOY. Join me on this cleanse, right? Again, we can't do anything about the parasites in Washington, D.C., but we can take care of it. We can take responsibility for our own bodies and make sure that we are naturally healthy with regular parasitic cleanses. 15% off right now in your order if you go to purgestore.com/joy. Welcome back, everyone, to the Shannon Joy Show. Today, we are joined by Tiffany Cianci. Please follow her on TikTok, follow her on TikTok, follow her on X, and all of her social media platforms. She's exposing the crony capitalism, venture socialism, the criminal cartel in Washington, D.C. that is enabling a billionaire class to consolidate wealth unethically and illegally at an accelerated rate, especially since the lockdowns of 2020. And we've talked about their tactics, collusion, predatory lending, fraud, price fixing, the creation of monopolies, bribery and harassment, all of this insanely quasi-legal because they're changing the regulatory language underneath, in all kinds of actions through legislation and executive orders and emergency declarations, you name it. But basically, they are enabling private equity, super shady, super secret organizations run by billionaires to come in and gobble up basically everything. Land, housing, businesses, franchises, small businesses, you name it, they're coming in, they're grabbing it, then they're pulling the rug out from underneath people. And no one understands this better than Tiffany Cianci because she lived it, she experienced it, she's reported on it. And you are pushing out explainers in very short video formats that are powerful, impactful, and understandable. It's also the truth, which mainstream news media, left and right, really aren't getting. So thank you for all that you're doing, Tiffany. And I'm glad that you're still kicking and that you're taking names and fighting back. And let's move now into an explainer. Pretend I'm a fifth grader, because this stuff can get complicated. And I consider myself an intelligent person, but this is highly complicated, the way that they structure this, and they use it for different entities, but people need to understand it so that they can protect themselves. So can you give us a quick explainer on private equity and then begin to explain how they are using the collusion with the power structure in DC to set a trap, a mega trap, like a huge trap for essentially the entirety of the American population? But let's start first with private equity. There's good private equity and bad private equity, but let's go there if you can help explain it, and we'll start there and expand.
I always like to preface that there is good private equity and there's bad private equity. And private equity has become a really dirty word because a lot of it is not the good private equity. But I also happen to work for a company that is great private equity. I work for a company that just invests in tiny startups that couldn't get money anywhere else and helps young people make dreams happen, right? Like I work for a company that engages in amazing private equity. If your mom gives you money to start a business, that is private equity. Anything that doesn't come from the public or through a public scheme is private equity. What we're really talking about is pirate equity. Okay. And pirate equity is a type of private equity that doesn't make anything but money. What they do is they find the work of others, the excellence of others, the ingenuity of others. They acquire it often by force or like just brute acquisition and nefarious tactics. And then rather than building it up and making it better or more exceptional, the way that we would think of as the American way. What they do is they extract and strip mine every bit of value out of it, flip it to the next private equity firm that is pirate-like, and then they extract a little more, stack a little more debt on it, flip it to the next guy, extract a little more, stack a little more debt on it. And all the while, they bear no responsibility for what ends up being the high likelihood of an eventual bankruptcy from what was the picture of American excellence when they acquired it the first time. And so what we're talking about is, okay, and when you look at that, Joann's Crafts is an amazing example. At the time of Joann's bankruptcy, 97% of their stores were profitable. They had doubled their customer base in the previous 5 years, largely due to hobbies people picked up during COVID. They had all these new customers and all this new money. And what happened? None of that went to paying off the debt that private equity firms had stacked on top of them, right? And when I say stacked on top of them, that's kind of something I want to step back from, because when a private equity firm acquires a company, they engage in something called a leveraged buyout, something that started in the 80s, but was very unpopular, gained in interest and notoriety during the 90s. We all saw it when we villainized Richard Gere in Pretty Woman.
Yeah, I remember that.
Bad guy. Yes, he broke up. He bought huge companies and broke them up and sold off the parts. He was a pirate. Yes. We knew that was bad, and nobody was on his side until he decided to build great ships. I'm going to make things again, more than money, right? And Stuckey was the bad guy because he wanted to make money. We make money, Edward. We make money. So we knew that was bad then. We knew it was bad then, right? Well, so it gained a lot of notoriety when Obama expanded access to it. But Obama's not alone. Every single president since Carter has expanded access for private equity to do more and more horrible things. Every single one. The biggest expansions were under Clinton and Obama, but they did it with bipartisan Congresses and with almost unanimous support. It's a two-party problem. Okay.
Yep.
And when they buy a company, what they'll do is they'll say, hey, that craft store looks very, very profitable. I see I can get a lot out of it. They've got a lot of stock. They own their real estate. They own some warehouses and a fleet of trucks. I think I can do a lot with this. And they'll say, I'm going to buy you for $5 billion. Well, they don't have $5 billion. They have $5 million. And they're going to borrow $5 billion from a bunch of pensions. And they're going to stack it on top of Joann's. Joann's owes that money back, not the guys who borrowed it. It's like buying a car and saying the car owes the money back. Does the car have to go out and make money back? Because that's what we're talking about. If you bought a car and said the car owes my note, the car would need to go self-drive and make enough money to pay back that note. The car would need to offload its parking space it owned a week ago to dividend money back to its investors without paying down its debt. The car would have to start skimping on gas. So we're talking about buying a company without any money and stealing money from old people to do it, right? And so they do that. They stack the debt on top of the company, and then they start selling off the parts. First thing we're going to do is sell the real estate to our sister private equity firm for a screaming deal. And then we're going to lease it back to Joann so that now they have a debt every month they never paid before, right? Then after we sell the land and now we stack them with a new, I don't know, $150,000 a month rent on their store. Now what we're going to do is sell the warehouses to the same sister private equity firm. And then we're going to lease those back to them. And now they can pay a $25,000 a month note on that, right? And after that, we're going to sell their fleet of trucks. And we're going to dividend that money back, never paying down the debt they have stacked on top of the company, okay? We're going to dividend that back to ourselves. And that first private equity firm, their investors are going to do great. They're going to do fine. And they're because it only lasts 2 to 3 years and they kick it out. The next private equity firm gets it and they go, you know what? We have a lot of dead stock in those leased warehouses. Let's liquidate it. And now Joann's has nothing to survive economic downturn. They have regular bills every day with no dead stock to draw on. And they have nothing to survive if there's an economic downturn. They have no way to get through it. And let's cut 40% of our staff. We'll figure it out. It'll be fine. You know what we'll do next? We'll cut the warehouses for the online store and we'll rent those back. We'll sell those to our sister private equity firm. This is how Toys R Us went. Toys R Us owned all of the real estate they were built on. They owned their entire fleet of trucks. They employed all of their drivers. They had built an entire network that made it so they were the place to go for babies and toys. It was not Amazon that killed Toys R Us. There should have been a Toys R Us store on Amazon. It was not Toys R Us that died because of Amazon. It was not because they failed to adapt. Toys R Us died because private equity stole everything from them, sold it to their friends, exploited every resource that they had built over a long storied history, and it was left as rubble and a bunch of intellectual property they sold off to Macy's in a bankruptcy. And that's
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
What just happened to Hooters, and that's what just, because Hooters was another profitable one I couldn't figure out why it was going under.
Right.
And they do all of this with adjustable rate debt.
Right.
Adjustable rate debt. And
Okay.
so when you're stacking this debt on a company, well, let's say they all did it 4 years ago when those interest rates were 2.5%. You could probably flip that or float that for a while. You're not really paying a whole lot of interest. You'll be all right.
Mm-hmm.
But then the interest went up. And now, if you look at what private equity is paying, well, they're not paying anything, but the stores they stacked it on, a lot of that debt is now 14 to 19%. And if it's considered distressed, they took it out of bankruptcy, it's 21%. Could you buy your house at 21%? Could you pay your bill?
Absolutely not. No.
No. So they crumble. And that's how private equity works.
And they've done this. Yeah, can I pause you for a second? And they've done this again, lots of examples here. In my own town, 3 of my favorite places in the span of 3 years have gone out of business. I used to go to Joann Fabrics all the time. They're out of business, a couple minutes from my home. Tuesday Morning was the first to go down, one of my favorite places to get discount home goods. They went down. And then just recently, 8 months ago, one of my favorite, right down the road from my house, Big Lots, loved the staff there. I've been going there for years. And they shut down very abruptly, out of business. Interestingly enough, replaced with a Goodwill. Isn't that interesting that, when you think about the optics of that, like what they plan for all of us. And this is not a knock on Goodwill. Goodwill is a great
every
charity
party city in the United States was turned into either a Dollar Tree or a Five Below. So that is a common theme.
So yeah, exactly. Like it seems as if they
acquired their real estate in the bankruptcy.
Tiffany, this is the question that is screaming out to me. Why would a successful entity or a successful franchise or retailer like Joann's or Toys R Us, why would they even agree to work with the private equity? Why would they take this deal? It sounds like a terrible, terrible deal that you're explaining here. And no normal person or reasonable person or anyone with business acumen would ever take that deal. So how is it that these private equity corporations can come in and then wield so much power, right? Like they get to tell them exactly. I mean, it's like these corporations have no power whatsoever. I'd love for you to explain that.
So there's a couple different instances we need to discuss because there's some presuppositions in that statement that are fundamentally, I guess, flawed because you're a decent person and you have decent ideas about people being decent. You just said nobody with any business acumen would do this. You absolutely would if you were positioning yourself to move up to a private equity board seat once it was done. Okay. But the primary thing, let's talk about that. Kristen Sinema. Let's talk about Kristen Sinema. Okay. In 2021, they almost closed the carried interest loophole, which would have put private equity out of business. It would have stopped it, all of it, because that's how they make their money. They had the votes. And Kristen Sinema took millions of dollars in donations to change her vote, to keep the carried interest loophole open, something that Trump swore he was going to close when he got into office and then used to raise a bunch of money as well. Okay.
No.
And when they did that, private equity promised her they were going to flood the state of Arizona and it was going to become their new hot seat. Well, guess what state my court case was based in? Arizona, the most friendly state in the United States for private equity after Texas. Okay. She said when she knew she wouldn't get elected because of what she did, she said, I'll land on a board somewhere. Everybody thought she meant a university. That was not what she meant. She meant at a private equity firm.
Wow.
And everybody didn't realize it, but I knew that's where she would go. And now she has started a private equity funded super PAC to control land for data centers.
Oh.
I knew she would end up on a private equity firm like board. So first of all, business people are taught to make money. They're not taught to make a difference at all. Business ethics is one class in 300, and most of the time they don't even use it. It's escape class, okay? Right. And they can actually offset it by taking philosophy of ethics, right? You can take it with philosophy 132 and get out of it. It's fine. So you have to understand that like when you suggest that business people are good and they should care about their employees, that has not been true in America for a very, 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 very long time. We can go all the way back to the landmark case Dodge versus Ford. Dodge versus Ford, Ford company wanted the best cars and they wanted the best workforce. They didn't want to lose people, and they were losing people to the Dodge brothers. And so Ford started investing. They doubled their wages. And then they started building schools for the employees' kids. And then they started building infrastructure and homes. And they started spending their profits. And the Dodge brothers bought one share of Ford stock and sued as shareholders and said, you don't get the right to do well by your employees. You have to serve your shareholders. And Ford said, no, we can be an ethical company and serve our shareholders. And they said no. And it went all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court agreed. They serve the shareholders. They don't serve the employees. And that has been the governing law in the United States every single day since the early 1900s.
That's fiduciary, right? That's fiduciary responsibility?
Correct. Their duty is to the shareholders. And so if a private equity fund or a coalition of private equity funds sees a company like Joann's on the stock market and they want to take them private and they offer above the last 1 year's price, knowing they can squeeze more than what they're going to spend out of it, then all they have to do is make the offer, and by law, the company has to sell. They don't get
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
By that rationale, then could you say a corporation or a hospital system or a pharmaceutical corporation could, in just an imaginary, right? Like say it is very profitable to inject poison into customers and make them sick so that they get so sick that you need to give them other pharmaceutical products or more medical treatment in order to make more money for your corporation. Like, could they make an excuse that actually serves the shareholders and that actually fulfills their fiduciary responsibility, even if they're killing millions of people with poison shots and making them very sick? I mean, it's kind of a crazy example, but
do their customers have an arbitration agreement and a non-disclosure agreement? Because I would say those are two different things. Like right now, if you look at the company that I've been fighting, I'm going to use this example because I know it personally. Okay. The company I've been fighting had, the CEO had needed to cut what's called EBITDA, which is one of the metrics that's used for private equity valuations. They needed to get more money from a company called AHR Capital. And I was a bunch of secret documents from another court case that confirmed all this for me. So the company needed more profitability in their stores at urban air adventure parks, where everybody that watches your show probably has kids go for birthday parties. So they said they wanted to start cutting the safety staff on the floor. And one of them they wanted to cut was the harness checker for the zip lines that are 35 to 40 feet up in the air with children on them. Okay. So let's just say that he needed that EBITDA. They needed each of those locations to be more profitable. They were going to save about $10,000 a year for a child's life. $10,000 a year. Okay. And the safety team said, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Kids are going to die. No. Well, in the document that I was sent, there was a big argument going on between lawyers where they said they were overruled. And just 3 weeks later, a little girl in Ahwatukee, Arizona, fell off the first zip line, and then kids continued to fall. And they had arbitration agreements. And they had non-disclosure agreements and confidentiality clauses in those birthday party agreements. And that was their cost of doing business for children's lives, because they made more money in that investment, maybe, allegedly, for educational purposes only, obviously, because I'm not a lawyer. I was just reading a document, right? But they could have theoretically made a lot more money from that investment from the private equity firm than they lost in arbitrations where they were going to win anyway, because they were in arbitrations.
This is insane. This is horrifying. It's grotesque.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
But
Chrysler's doing that right now. Chrysler has a bunch of minivans that shut off while you're driving like 70 miles an hour on the freeway. They just turn off.
Great.
And nobody's died. So they haven't issued a fix because the cost of dealing with the lawsuits and replacing, like buying the cars back, was cheaper than actually fixing them for the few people that would get through arbitration. It was just a few people that got through arbitration, almost nobody. And so people were getting in horrible car accidents. People were driving down the road at 70 miles an hour and the car would just shut off with 4 kids in the back seat. And Chrysler said, well, nobody's died. And if they did, it would still be cheaper than fixing it for everybody. Cost of doing business is a build-in, absolutely, in every corporation that serves a shareholder or a private equity firm that is dishonest. That is an unethical private equity.
Unbelievable. And there are even reports, Elon, with Teslas. I mean, the Teslas exploding, burning, so those batteries burn so hot, and they're even suppressing the data, within the federal government. I think as a payout to Elon Musk. He doesn't want that to get out. But yeah, I don't know that people would be able to even sue them. Tiffany, this is horrifying. It's in every sector. Can you explain how they are erasing the American dream of home ownership and making it impossible for people to buy homes, regular young people? Yeah. So, and then not only, are they making it impossible for them to buy homes, they're actually going to make it impossible for them to afford rent, because as they acquire more and more private property, more and more land and residential properties, single family homes, once they have enough, they can jack up, or they're already jacking up rents, but they can jack up rents to a point where you never leave the company store. Literally, like, correct. You're in the United States of America and you will never, ever, ever get ahead, because your paycheck is never going to get you ahead. Your currency will always be devalued. And the second you have a little bit stored away, they're going to jack up the rent, jack up the heating and cooling. We didn't even talk about HVAC. We don't have to, because it's too much. I only have about 10 more minutes with you.
And that goes into the cost of ownership too. So it's all related.
So go ahead. Why don't you start there and explain? Yeah. How are they erasing the American dream? This is like horrifying. Go ahead.
So a lot of people say BlackRock buys homes. That's not true. BlackRock invests in a lot of private equity funds and real estate investment trusts that buy homes. Blackstone, however, is the single largest owner of single family residences in the world, not just the United States. They also own all the dorms in all the colleges now to hike up the price of a college education. As investors and private equity funds acquire as much as 44% of the available stock in some metropolitan areas, they actually conspire to fix prices. And there's different ways that happens. Like, you can look at Pulte, the guy that just said we should all have a 50-year mortgage because saving $200 a month is worth paying an extra $700,000 in interest, right? His company has started building whole communities to sell to a private equity fund before it ever hits the market. And lots of home companies are doing that now, where they just get like an easy build out because everything is preset, and a private equity fund can come in and they buy 150 houses in a neighborhood that would have been new houses for residents that want new houses. And they're sold to private equity before it begins, but they're not renting them. They're not going to fill those houses. They might just sit there. Let's say they bought it at a discount because they bought them in bulk and they chose all the fixtures in bulk and they got this huge discount over what you or I would get. And they'll just let it sit for like a year, saying it's still under construction or whatever. And then they sell 3 to 5 of those homes to their sister company or a friend or a real estate investment trust they know at double the price. And suddenly their portfolio is worth double. And now the comps for the entire community are double. And now they can charge rent based on those new comps, or they can sell them based on those new comps, or they can borrow against that value as an asset that's artificially inflated. Meanwhile, all of the communities around those houses now are hiking their property taxes, and every person in the area is going to suffer because of their egregious greed, right? But that's just one example. They're buying up apartment complexes in record numbers. They're buying up individual homes in record numbers. They're not improving them. They're not. They're just taking all of the stock that's available so that they can conspire, collude, and fix prices. And there was recently an FBI raid on a company in Georgia that was fixing prices by offering competitive analysis of a landlord's property. But what they didn't tell you was when you clicked the terms and conditions, just like an arbitration agreement that was in their agreement, you agreed that you were going to use the price they recommended. So even these mom and pops were like putting in a comp, and then they would say, you need to double your rent. And they go, no, I'm not doubling my rent. I'm not going to screw over my tenants that way. They go, yeah, you will, or we'll sue you. You agreed to it when you clicked the box. And they were fixing prices owned by private equity firms. And the FBI had to raid them for anti-competitive practices. That was when Lena Khan was still in charge at the FTC, and good investigations were still being done at the DOJ. But right now, all of that's kind of gone on hold.
Can you speak to that? Donald Trump Yeah, I was going to say Trump actually really betrayed a lot of people by stripping out some of the best regulators in
Yeah.
DC, getting rid of them, and it's gotten worse. Go ahead.
Yeah, he fired Lena Khan, Rebecca Slaughter, and Alvaro Bedoya at the Federal Trade Commission. They were the three commissioners that I had worked with to pass 2 laws to protect small businesses. And I was actually cited in Lena Khan's announcements on those laws as her inspiration for protecting others from what happened to me. She said it was too late for me, but not too late to help others, and we could turn what I was doing into good. Well, she was going after all of the major corporations and all of the big monopolists, and she was doing investigations that were making a real difference. JD Vance was a huge fan of hers. Josh Hawley, huge fan of hers. So was Matt Gaetz. And Matt Gaetz said he was looking forward to working with her as Attorney General. And a day later, all of that slander came out about Matt Gaetz. I'm not going to advocate for Matt Gaetz, but I do know that it was within 24 hours of saying he couldn't wait to work with Lena that his bid for Attorney General was axed. There were a lot of conservatives that wanted her to stay where she was at, fighting for consumers. And Trump fired all of them. And I thought it was a huge betrayal for the American people. Huge.
Yeah.
All of the investigations I was a part of have sort of continued, but very sluggishly, right? If nothing's being done to actually hold these corporations to account. Now, recently, they kind of limped their way across the finish line and let Meta win their antitrust case by not actually doing what they needed to do to fight for it. You know, they had just beaten Google in the antitrust case. So it's just really sad. But when it comes to housing, there's a lot of price fixing that's gone on. There's an immense amount of corruption. And when people say, a lot of people like to blame immigrants for the housing shortage, sure, right. You know, like, I'm not trying to stereotype, but 13 people in an apartment is not taking away your first home. All right, that could be a factor. The corporations acquiring 44% of the stock, investors acquiring 44% of the stock, even frankly, the Airbnb trend that I find so distasteful is contributing to you not buying your first home. But more than any of that, it's the fact that every single thing in our society right now is being fixed by a group of monopolists. Everywhere you look, there is a monopoly ready to exploit you. And people are being exploited in record ways across every litany of their life, whether it's at the veterinary clinics that have all been acquired by private equity, all of them, the emergency rooms, the pediatricians, the orthodontist offices, the HVAC companies, or let's talk about what happened this week with Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut.
Okay.
He was at his sports game. He was like this. He was holding a phone like this at his kid's sports game, recording his kid, Senator Chris Murphy. And they come over, a representative for Black Bear Sports Private Equity Group, and they say, "Excuse me, sir, what are you doing?" And he says, "I'm recording my kid." And they go, "Oh, you can't do that. You click the terms and conditions, and you have to pay us a fee if you want to record your child on our property. And we bought all of the sports facilities in your community, so you can no longer record your own child at their sports games, because we bought everything. And we will monetize everything to strip mine every dollar you and those companies had."
Unbelievable. Children's sports is a big one. Yeah, children's sport, like kids sports, is a big one. And oh my gosh. And the HVAC,
$40 billion a year in private equity money, kids sports, $40 billion a year. And they want to turn it into $60 billion a year. So that's why there's no rec leagues anymore. They've bought up all of the facilities, so no lower income groups can get through. Nothing that's affordable can get through. They've bought up everything. There's just nothing left.
Tiffany, there are so many. We've been talking for an hour, and there are about 3 or 4 other themes that I would love to get into with you, because there is so much. The HVAC stories are really interesting about how they're using name, image, and likeness of longstanding community business owners, buying up their businesses through private equity and purchasing their name, like making it look like it's still a locally owned business. But not only are they doing that, they're buying up all of the businesses around them, the competitors, and then they're price fixing in the HVAC arena. We're not going to have time to get into that, but that story blew my mind. We have a couple minutes left. I would like to talk to you about, because one of the other reasons that I love what you're doing is that you have a lot of hope and you keep fighting, and you're winning in a lot of ways. I mean, there is a lot of winning happening but it is a massive battle. So I guess my question to you as we close this out is, what gives you hope? What is it that keeps you in the fore, fighting back, calling out both political parties? Thank you, by the way, for having the balls to call out both the Republicans and the Democrats, to talk, to tell the truth to conservatives about Trump and his administration. That is so rare. There are so few voices that are willing or courageous enough to do that. And so I applaud you for that. Believe me, the Democrats are terrible too. We're not giving them a pass here. But right now, the people in power are Republicans, and I scrutinize power. That's what I do. I've done that for 12 years with the show. What gives you hope? And what would you like this audience of regular people who have children, who want to pass to their children the American dream of homeownership and owning a business and that type of thing? What would you say to them in terms of a hope message?
Yeah. So one of the things that I like to remind people of is that the people, the men and women that built this country, built us a very elastic republic. It's resilient. It's capable of surviving immense struggle and strife. And right now we're experiencing a time of what people would call unprecedented consolidation through our capitalistic practices. Except it's not unprecedented. We saw it in the 1920s, and 100 years later, fast forward, we are here again. And it's going to be really hard when it comes crashing down, but we rebuilt once before. And we can do it again. The question is whether or not Americans can look to one another and actually start caring more about what they have in common than what separates them. I remind everybody that statistically, if you look at somebody on your street, you believe you hate maybe. You've been conditioned to hate. You can look to two people on your block, one with a pride flag and a BLM flag, and another one with a POW and a Confederate flag in the back of their truck, right? Let's say you have those two people. Statistically, they have between 88% and 93% of their values in common. Those same two people who got to hate each other have 8% of their values in common with a billionaire. 8%. But they have conditioned us to use that 3 to 10% total, like on the sides of the parties that they've allocated to keep us in outrage all the time, to make us hate one another. I don't think so. And as people are becoming more and more uncomfortable with the obscene wealth inequality and the obscene consolidation and the obscenity of Washington, D.C., and both parties being two wings of the same bird, people do look to one another. You can look at what happened in Asheville, North Carolina after Hurricane Helene. Asheville is a very divisive place. There's also a place of peace and love. There's very disparate groups, socioeconomic groups in Asheville, North Carolina. Well, I was there this weekend, and I was riding in an Uber car with a gentleman who was a former military officer who had done his own nails and had sparkly boots in the trunk. And he said that he was up in the sticks in the very conservative areas delivering water the day after. Because when we really need it, America comes together. It always has. And I believe it's capable of always doing so. We also have more access to information than we have at any point in human history right now, period. And people are waking up to a whole lot of propaganda and a whole lot more of realizing that they're being conditioned to hate one another. Now, there's still a lot of anger and a lot of unfriendly discourse. But maybe we could start to change that. Start with Thanksgiving next week. Instead of going, well, you're wrong about this issue, go, why do you feel that way? What in your past has given you that perspective? I was on InfoWars last week. Harrison is very anti-exploitation of the SNAP system. And I said, I grew up on SNAP benefits and I starved without them repeatedly. I needed that. I needed benefits. And right now we're giving $285 billion a year in overpayments to billionaires. Why do you care if $1 billion goes to feeding hungry kids that you think don't deserve it? Get some perspective, man. And after the show, he was like, I didn't think of that.
Yeah. I think that they've absolutely, I agree with you 100%. And I think that they've warped, we have this like capitalism versus socialism battle, and R's are capitalists and the D's are socialists or communists or whatever. I mean, I think, quite frankly, right now we're dealing with.
These are not socialists. The elite D's
I
are
know. Right. And I think actually what we're dealing with in the country, if we were really to define it, is probably fascism from both parties. But, no one ever talks about free markets. Like there's this funny word called capitalism. I don't really know what that is. I know I love free markets. I know I love competition. I know I love rule of
We don't have
law.
either of those right now.
Right.
We don't have
it's
any
like
of that.
all right. Exactly. It's like only the worst parts of yeah.
For every Republican watching your show that says, I hate socialism, socialism's benchmark is government control of industry. Pretty sure Trump just acquired 10% of Intel to artificially prop up our market a little more and drive some more chip creation. That is socialist. That is socialism.
Yes, it is.
But you've given socialism to corporations since 2008. We bail out all of them. Americans never get bailed out. Ever. So we have a country right now for the last 20 years that has had socialism for corporations and the downside penalties of capitalism for everyday Americans. And if people could just break through their red and blue glasses and look a little bit purple, they would see we have a lot more in common than we have that separates us. And that's why I do have hope. I do.
It's a great message. And I agree with you 100%. This is why I went to a No Kings rally in my neighborhood because I'm like, they were very normal. They were
do it.
Well, you what now here's the thing though. I was very gracious because they were my neighbors. Number one, it wasn't AstroTurf. They were my neighbors, and they were the same neighbors who literally cheered when I was arrested for not wearing my mask properly at a school board meeting. So they're like, throw that girl. I mean, it was terrible. But like, I'm hearing what you're saying. I agree with you. We're all in this together. I know it sounds so trite. These are extraordinary times. And
that's true. It's not trite at all.
And it is. And I think, from the bottom up. So I feel like I want to let you go because I want to respect your time. I would love to explore more of these themes with you on the show and collaborate more. We're behind you. The audience loves you on the Rumble and the Twitter. Can you please just tell everyone what they can do to support you, where they can find you, how they can support your efforts, and direct them right to that? I hope to have you on a regular basis moving forward because you're just brilliant. And I think that you're hitting exactly the points that need to be hit upon if we're going to survive in the next 2 years. And we can survive. All right, let's leave with that. But go ahead. How can people help you and support you?
So you can follow me on TikTok at Tiffany Cianci, and on YouTube. You can follow me on Instagram and X at the Vino Mom because I used to be a sommelier. So I've had that name for a really long time. And if you want to support the legal battles of a bunch of the people that private equity is hurting, including me, we have a group of women that are all fighting back against private equity. You can donate at GiveSendGo/FightPrivateEquity. So and that goes straight to lawyers.
I love it. Yep, I love all of it. All right. Well, keep giving them hell, Tiffany. It's women like you that make me sleep better at night. Because I know there are a lot of you out there, and really great to meet you for the first time on the show. And I hope to work with you more in the future. Thank you. Have a great Thanksgiving.
Can't wait to go. Thanks. You too.
All right. Thanks. All right, guys. I told you were going to love her. Absolutely. CJP Rumble, she is absolutely a doll, but she's also a fighter, and she's consistent, and she's unafraid of, telling the truth about whichever political party. She resists being pulled into the two-party political fracas. And wow, doesn't it just feel great to hear the truth? Isn't it unbelievable to hear the truth? Have you always wondered about what's going on with all these franchises and wondered about what's really going on with your home and why the value is skyrocketing? And, haven't you always wondered about like what's going on in this kind of high financial billionaire world? Like, just to have it explained in a truthful way is just, amazing. What did they say? What is it? An extraordinary truth is a revolutionary act. Oh, in times of great deceit. This is attributed to Orwell. I don't know if he really said it, but in times of great deceit, like uber deceit, Like, left-wing news media is lying to you and manipulating stories. Right-wing news media is lying to you and manipulating stories. Both political parties are lying to us. So great deceit, universal deceit, meaning nearly everything you see and hear on the radio, in print, on television, on social media is curated propaganda. Universal deceit. The truth is a revolutionary act. And it cuts through like a hot knife through butter. And I just hope that we can do more of that here on the Shannon Joy Show. And we're going to be watching Tiffany Cianci and everything that she's doing. Thank you all for being with me today and joining me on the Shannon Joy Show. Thank you to TJ for producing the Shannon Joy Show. Thank you to our sponsors, Rocket Dollar, rocketdollar.com/join, to learn about how you can take control of your 401k, your retirement, understanding that they're going to crush this economy. We know that a crash is coming. And so many people's pensions and 401ks are in jeopardy. You can take custody, full custody if you want, or partial custody of your retirement, your IRA or your 401k. You can do that through Rocket Dollar. In that, once you have that, your own self-directed IRA, you can invest in everything you want. Very, very boring stocks that are not tech stocks. You could do that. You can invest it in physical gold and silver. So you can acquire physical gold and silver through Rocket Dollar. You can also invest in real estate, like in your neighborhood. You can be one of those all cash offers on a multi-family home in your neighborhood that you can keep an eye on. You can do all those things through Rocket Dollar. It's an amazing organization. And I'm very, very excited to collaborate with them in the future, especially on the real estate aspect as well. So make sure you check them out. You can give them a call. They'll answer all your questions. You can download that free guide. Go to rocketdollar.com/joy so that they know we sent you. Also, our friends over at the Satellite Phone Store, Sat123. Make sure you get your Purge. So can't purge the parasites in Washington, D.C., but you can take care of your own gut. And that is with the Purge. Right now, it is on special. So scroll down in the show notes of the Shannon Joy Show. We really appreciate them. PCM Associates, Dom Polano, an amazing sponsor of the Shannon Joy Show. He's been with me for 12 years, very first sponsor. If you want a financial advisor that shares your values and that supports the Shannon Joy Show, I trust Dom Polano. He has been with me for such a long time and such a great partner. Scott Gordon, thank you so much for your comment. A show of hope. Appreciate you. LT Oracle of Truth. Love the show. Great guest. Thank you guys so much. Guitar Lily, thank you for your support. Buskman, love seeing you on the live chat as well. Mark the Regan, thank you so much. And future as the NASDAQ is down 4.25% in 4 hours. So, well, yeah, here we go. Buckle up, everyone. Great to see you all. We will be back tomorrow to do it all again right here on the Shannon Joy Show.